couple years before the Siri Singh Sahib passed away, he gave me a hookup to translate the Siddhi Guru Granth Sahib into English. And since he passed away a couple years ago, I think, yeah, I had a really smart teacher because he just gave me something that's going to keep me busy for the rest of my life. There's no such time as idle time in my world, because when I'm not working and when I'm not taking care of my house, I'm like, I have to translate the Guru. Because if I die and I don't do it, he's going to be there waiting for me and asking me why didn't I do it. It was a really amazing experience. 2 years before he passed away, he personally worked with me on translating Japji. And Kaaur and I were talking about some of the stories over lunch, and I'm not going to actually start the course talking about them. I'll throw stories in here and there as we go along. But the reason it's a little important to mention is that when the Siri Singh Sahib came to the United States, he brought the spirit of the Gurus with him. And when he kind of saw the hippies in the late 60s and early 70s looking for an experience of consciousness, he gave them Guru Nanak's words. He just gave them Guru Nanak's words in a language that they could understand it. And over the years, he's always asked everyone in Sikh Dharma, please, please, understand the Guru in its own language. And if it takes you a whole page to translate 2 lines of Gurbani, take a whole page to translate 2 lines of Gurbani. And, you know, I want to say up front that I'm a beginner. I am a novice. There are tons of mistakes in what I've done, I'm sure. I have no doubt. I am just learning. And I want to apologize in advance for the, you know, this is the first time actually, you know, Kaaur kind of, we had this idea, and this is the first time I'm doing like a whole course just on Japji, a day and a half. So please know I'm nervous, and that, you know, my apologies in advance for any mistakes that may happen over the next day and a half. But what I'm excited about is that I have fallen in love with Guru Nanak. And I want to share that falling in love with all of you, so that maybe you can fall in love with him too. So that said, I want to start with a few stories about Guru Nanak. I've been reading a lot of Makhalif lately, and again, you know, sometimes my mind is a little fuzzy on details. But you know, when we think about how many here in this room, is there anybody in this room this is kind of your first exposure to Guru Nanak? You know, you've never really heard of him before. We all kind of, okay, good, I just wanted to check and see. So, you know, I've been reading these stories about Guru Nanak and Makhalif. And it's written in very formal language and very thou and thy kind of language. But when, you know, you start reading about Guru Nanak's life, you realize he was a pretty radical dude for his time, you know. He was not going along with the status quo. There's this story about how he had such a longing for God that he just wound up in bed sick because he was like having such a longing for the experience of God, and he was driving his parents crazy. Okay, all of you who have children, right, if one day your child just couldn't get out of bed because they were just so in love with God and they couldn't stand it, right? You'd like call the doctor to find out what was wrong with them, which is what happened for Guru Nanak. His parents called the doctor and said, did you find out what's wrong with our son? He's not getting out of bed. And Guru Nanak was like, you can't cure me. I'm looking for my beloved, and I can't find my beloved. He loved to go hang out with all of the yogis and not just the yogis. He loved to go find all the people who knew something about God, the spiritual people of his day. He just wanted to hang out and talk to them and find out what their experience was and what their reality was. This drove his dad nuts. His dad just drove him crazy. So his dad was like, I'm going to get my kid to learn some business. So he put him into a business, you know, doing accounting. He just had to count money. Well, the Punjabi word for 13, come on, what is it? Tera, right? Am I saying it right? Tera. And the word for thou or thine or yours is Tera. So when Guru Nanak got to the number 13, he just started going into bliss and going, Tera, 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 Tera. You know, so he was like counting 13 over and over again, because for him it wasn't the number 13. All of a sudden, he was feeling the experience of the divine. And he just kept counting it, counting it. Of course, now that's driving his dad bonkers, because my son used to make a living. He can't even count numbers. He gets stuck on number 13. And was some story about how, anyway, how in doing that, actually, there was some miracle that was happening when Guru Nanak was counting 13 over and over and over again, where all of a sudden the wealth was just multiplying because he was blessing it, because he was in a state of love. But of course he was driving, everyone around him crazy because he wasn't acting according to the social rules of the day. He was in so much love that he, when they did the Hindu ceremony with the thread when he was a teenager, and he was like, what the heck is this? And he broke it off and he threw it away. And they're like, what are you doing? He's like, social convention doesn't matter to me. I just want the experience of love. I just want the experience of love. Well, Guru Nanak, he lived a human life. And one thing that the Sri Singh Sahib taught us in Sikh Dharma is he said that Guru Nanak meditated for 10,000 years in the ethers, in the heavens, before he came into form, because his mission was that powerful. He had to meditate that deeply for 10,000 years before he became a human being. And he kind of, it wasn't that he was, well, some people might, let me see how I can phrase this. He had to go through his own growth into his own wisdom. It wasn't like he knew everything. When he was a teenager, he was struggling with the reality he saw around him. Like, why do I have to get a job? Why do I have to, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to do that? When he was, when he got older and his parents were like, okay, maybe if we get him a wife, he'll start to settle down, So he got married, he went through, he went into the family life. But he was always looking for something else. He was always looking for something more. He would spend his money feeding and being with the people who were meditating, and he would talk to everybody and analyze everybody and wanted to know everything. And then, I forget what age he was at. Again, I'm sorry, my details aren't always so clear. Then at a certain age, he had his own experience of what one could call enlightenment. He had his own experience where his mind merged within his spirit. And the story goes that, every morning he would get up and he would do his ishnaan, he would do his morning bath, he went into the river. And one morning he went into the river and he didn't come out for 3 days. And of course everybody thought he was dead because he went to the river and he didn't come out. Well, he was in the water and he was just meditating. And in that experience, his being transformed, and all of a sudden he could open up and receive the information that he had been meditating for 10,000 years in the ethers in order to bring to the earth. And when he came out of the water 3 days later, he sang a song. And the song he sang was Japji Sahib. 10,000 years in the ethers, 3 days in the water, merged with God, and he sang a song.